What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Indie Inkwell. My name is JJ. I'm one of your two co-hosts. And for once this week, the Air Force has deemed it acceptable for my co-host, Michael, aka Longbox Entertainment, to join us. His laptop is on a charge, on a low charge, so we will keep him as long as we physically can.
Yeah, something had to go wrong. I guess in the rush, I was like, I can't find it. Let me just get on.
Right.
So,
But everybody, please welcome our guests, the creators and writers of Ramgod from Massive Publishing. We've got Morgan and Owen Rosenblum.
Yep. Yeah, you said it right.
Yes, awesome.
Said it right.
yes.
Awesome.
Brothers Bloom.
Fans of the show will know last names are always my worst spot. So
You nailed it.
Awesome. So welcome, guys. Thanks for coming on the show, especially short notice. I know we kind of set this up like 2 days ago.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
But we like to start off each episode with everybody's origin story. We kind of like, how did you guys first get introduced into comic books? I'm assuming you guys are brothers.
We are.
Okay. So did you guys, did one of you introduce the other to comic books, or was it kind of a mutual, you found them together, or how did that kind of start?
Our dad. So growing up, neither Owen nor I were very good readers, or at least like we just didn't like traditional, like prose text reading.
Yeah, we both got pretty bad ADHD, so like we were kind of all over the place all the time.
Yeah. Members of the club, I'm with
you. So getting us to sit down and read was very difficult if it didn't have pictures and something else that kind of would.
So hence, like we watch a lot of TV and movies and stuff like that, and so hence Dad was like, "Hey, I want to show you guys some comics." This is when we were young. I mean, like I don't know, 5, 6 kind of stuff. He used to read to us like picture books and like story. I'm an artist myself, so I've been drawing since I was a little boy. And when I think the first like series he got us going on was Spawn, which was like a little bit later. Maybe I was like 9 or something like that, 10. But like that and X-Men were like the first comics that we were reading like pretty regularly. Going to the comic book store was like like our Toys R Us, right? Like as kids, like that's what we did. So. And to this day, like we love comics. And then as far as like how do we get into writing it, which is like a different part of the origin story, like doing it professionally. About 12 years ago, I decided I was like working in sales and like nothing creative at all, but I've always had these creative juices inside me. And so I decided that I was like going to write a script, but that I wanted to have it turned into like a comic or a graphic novel. So I wound up like saving up some money over the course of a couple of years, and then like I went looking for an artist. And found one that I really liked to illustrate the first 10 pages of the script that I wrote. And then I put it on Kickstarter. And then like, that's kind of what got me going in the indie comic space. And then one thing led to another. And I eventually started being able to write, like for Darkrose and for heavy metal. I started working at heavy metal as I started as like a projects manager or whatever that means. And then
I've had that title at a few places too. I'm not
project managers, bro.
Started as an integrated projects manager, and my job was just to kind of help like tell the story in different mediums and find ways to do that. But ultimately I was like, I really want to get more involved like on the creative side of things. And I got an opportunity to like co-edit a story with Steve Orlando at the time. This was like my first editing gig. And then that kind of got me to become a junior editor. And then I just kind of moved up the ranks at Heavy Metal and finished as like a managing editor and creative director there before the company kind of like went on a hiatus and paused. But I've been writing comics professionally now for like indie and professionally for the last like 12 years, I guess. And then Owen, this is my first, like Owen's been involved, and I'll let him talk more about this. But this is our first comic that we have now co-written together. So we're really excited.
Okay.
Like our collective baby.
Yeah. So I'm gonna tag myself in here and not let my older brother talk for me. He's done that enough for my entire life.
Us older brothers do have that habit. I understand. I have a younger brother too.
The wiser younger brother, typically. So anyway, yeah, Morgan's always been the, like kind of like the chief creative officer and like the main writer that kind of leads the charge. For me, I'm a producer by trade, so I came from like video production and advertising traditionally. So I was kind of always making other people's creatives a reality. And then I kind of saw Morgan kind of do this, the indie approach. And I had a video production company at the time that I was like doing commercial productions and things like that. And I was like, you know what? Like, I really like the illustrated form. We were obviously comic fans and readers growing up. I was like, you know what? Like, I'm seeing him. He was, as I said, managing editor for Heavy Metal at the time when Ramgod was being developed. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to create this idea, but I don't really know what I'm doing here. I know how to world build and whatever, but I don't understand character development in that way. I don't
Right.
medium in that way, but who does? My older brother. Okay, let's do this together and kind of show me the ropes a little bit more. And then one thing led to another. And yeah, now we're here with Massive and Ramgod and ready to go.
That's awesome.
that's
So
awesome.
were there like specific writers or stories that you guys really clung to that kind of influenced your writing styles?
That's a good question.
That
I
is a
mean,
good
Morgan
question.
mentioned
We
Spawn
haven't-
before. So, like, I think for
Todd
me,
McFarlane.
at least, Todd McFarlane is like, I love him and kind of everything he does. And yeah, that for me was definitely huge too. Like Age of Apocalypse probably too, X-Men. So massive X-Men fans here.
It's such a good series.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as far as like what influenced our writing style, I think there's so many. It's like I don't think I'm not like an athlete in like college or high school where I'm like, I model my game after this person. I write stories that like that I want to write. Like instead of trying like, yes, we keep the end consumer and the fan in mind, but like really the thing that sort of rings true for us is that we always want to tell the stories that excite us because we think we know what good content is, and like if we enjoy it, we kind of hope that our fans will also enjoy it because we're in that same demographic. So we're just like, what kind of stories inspire us and that do we want to tell? We always try to keep no matter how crazy of a world we wind up building, we always try to ground it with like really relatable characters. And it's really just like, if you remove the setting, you're like, that feels like this could totally be real kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that's really what we go for.
Yeah. And Morgan was saying too, but like, being native New Yorkers, which we both are, by the way, in case you and your audience didn't know that. We're huge New Yorkers, obviously, and fans of everything New York. But like being born and raised here, you're kind of like this like ant, part of a colony kind of thing. So Morgan always says like kind of taking a tight lens to a big world. And that's at being native New Yorkers, that's how you feel anyway, living here. So like that is kind of
I can't imagine living in a city that big with that many people.
Yeah. Born and raised as like a little kid looking around and just feeling, so small in comparison to everything around you. We were born seeing things from a tight lens in a big world. So when we write these stories in these fictional worlds, we are naturally seeing things from that lens. So like that's kind of inherently in our creative process, I would say. And we're world builders, obviously. And for me, that's my favorite part personally. And I love kind of being like, what are they wearing? What's the tech that they're using? What's what's the cars they're driving? What's the religions they're practicing? All types of stuff like that. I kind of always we're thinking about when the wheels are turning.
You just answered one of my questions without me even asking it. One of my questions was going to be like, how was it like on purpose to like put all these world building elements, but also make it more of a personal story, because it feels, but the fact that you just said that you see the world, through a tight lens. I like that. Cool.
Well, so like our story, Ramgod, takes place in a it's global, but it begins in a city called New City, which is it could be like a Gotham City, it could be a Metropolis. It's meant to be fictional, but it could be New York, it could be Chicago, Detroit, it could
or like Mega City and Dread too. Yeah. I think.
Right. So like when we always say tight lens, you'll see like when you're inside the city, it could just be any like New York or any of those things like in the future, and it like the way that we went about building the tech, like the world and the tech, it feels very real. It's not so fast forwarded in the future where like everything is like cybernetic and everyone's plugged in. In fact, we created like a history to our future, which is like, at some point you don't experience this in the story, but it's something that we thought about when we were building it, which was like, the world did gravitate more towards like VR and augmented reality and all that other stuff. But what wound up happening is it was detrimental to like society because people stopped taking care of themselves, stopped cleaning up. Like, they're not as healthy.
It's like Ready Player One meets WALL-E.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Right. So like the whole Ready Player One thing that happened in the history of our story, like but now everything takes place in like real life, and hence the sport Ramgod. The title of the series is called Ramgod, which is actually the name of this new sport that we've created, which is this new it's in their like second or third year. We don't say it exactly, but like it's a new sport, and it's like it's somewhat like the Olympics, but like on steroids with a lot of like old Roman gladiator type of vibes to it. Owen always compares it to like American Ninja Warrior. So there's 3 different heats, which are like competitions. There's racing, and the racing can be in different, like use different vehicles. So it could be like motorcycles. It could be hover runners, which are like wave runners that hover.
I was gonna say the race scene kind of gave me like a death race kind of vibe. If you've ever seen that movie.
Yeah.
So it's got twisted metal, even it's got like a little bit of that. And then there's
Neo Tokyo was probably that classic animated film was also an element of inspiration for the racing component for sure.
And then you got the combat component, which has a little Real Steel vibe, meets like Roman gladiators, and then like UFC style stuff. And then there's the climb, which is not. Sometimes it's like climbing up a mountain or like a man-made mountain. But the thing is, everyone has these like suits. There's the gear that they wear, and the suits have like parachutes and jetpacks and things like that, but they're all locked to begin. And the only way that you can unlock the features on your suit, like a parachute or a boost or, like a jet boost or something like that, is by like Mario Kart style. Like you have to find the boosts on the course, or they can be unlocked.
Okay.
We like to say like the comps are like Mario Kart meets like the Hunger Games, like where they did the sponsor gifts kind of thing. So
yeah.
Merged. If those were two to have a baby, that would be the boosts in Ramgod.
Okay.
So imagine this: like if they were to fall off of the mountain, which happens, and they haven't unlocked a boost, like the league could activate it to save their life. They don't. Where it's like if you don't or if you used up your boost already, like you used up all the jet fuel to like catch up to your opponent, and now you're out of it, and you were like slip and fall. Like, sorry, you mistimed it and you didn't use it properly. So it'd be like using NOS too early, but it's like you used your jetpack too soon, and now you'll plummet to your death. So it's like it's a dangerous sport, and like the more ballsy the athletes are, like kind of the better they perform, but also the higher the mortality rate. So at first, they had done like only humans in the sport, and there's like bots in the future. They're like not fully sentient, but they appear sentient. They're like AI people that are so every team can have one bot out of the 4 on their team. So there's 3 humans and 1 bot, and then you have 1 engineer, which is like your Q from James Bond that like builds your tech. It's like the genius person that like has a really
kind of like your pit boss in Formula 1 and stuff.
Right. Okay.
But they do more than just like the vehicles; they do like everything. So anyway, that's like kind of the setting in the world. But we follow the storyline that we actually follow is of this cop named Clint Bowler. And Clint is a former like superstar collegiate athlete that was supposed to be like the next like LeBron James, but for football pretty much. And but coming out of college, like he had gotten mixed up with some nefarious people, like namely the Chinese mob. And so he winds up like getting a lifetime ban from the NFL and pretty much from every single sport because of his affiliation, even though he wasn't indicted or actually like charged officially with anything. So he
wanted association type stuff.
Yeah,
exactly.
He probably was like he just like he didn't testify and stuff. So he kept his mouth shut. He's not like a snitches get stitches kind of thing. So like he didn't say anything. But anyway, it wound up like changing.
His brand just got completely tarnished.
So he changes his whole life and like gets on the straight and narrow and winds up becoming a cop, calling in some favors. And now the story begins 15 years later. So the dude's like 35 now, no longer like in his prime athlete, but he was still like a gifted athlete. And he's got like a teenage son that he gets to see once per month, Malcolm, who he doesn't really connect with at all. And he tries to be a good dad, but like his son, just Malcolm on the left there, like kind of just doesn't see his dad as like someone that he connects with or even really likes very much. And then Clint doesn't know how to connect with him. But the cool thing is that Malcolm is a diehard Ramgod fan, and particularly of this one. There's 8 teams in the league, and of the 8 teams, 7 of them are corporate owned and like sponsored. And so, but one of them, the Barracudas, are the People's Team. They're known as the People's Team because they are funded not through a corporate sponsor or owner, but through crowdfunding, right? So we're big on so it's almost like a Patreon that like pays for all high insurance
rates. Like Green Bay Packers a little bit.
Right. But here's
they're like publicly owned team, right?
Yeah, exactly. But what we find out, and this is, I'm giving away a little story here, but it's also part of like the pitch and like the synopsis, which is that the Barracudas, who are the people's team, actually moonlight as bank robbers, and they launder their money and filter it through the crowdsourcing platform to pay for all their stuff, right? So the inciting incident that sort of sets the story in motion is that following the end of the latest season of Ramgod, the league has now mandated a new rule where every team has to add a new player, a human player, to their roster. Okay, so think about that. The Barracudas have to not only find like a good athlete that's going to help them win in the league, but also someone that they can let into their inner circle and ultimately recruit into their little bank robberies and heists, things like that. And so, unlike Fast and the Furious, which we do compare ourselves to, and like the original Point Break with Keanu Reeves, where like there was an undercover detective trying to find out who the robbers are. No one knows that the two are connected at all. No one even has an idea about that. But when around the same time that the league has mandated this new rule, Clint is with his son and like goes after a perpetrator while he's off duty. And does these like crazy acrobatics, and commandeers like a hover runner motorcycle to go after this, like criminal, and winds up taking him down. And the video makes the evening news. And so the team captain of the Barracudas sees this and he's like, that's pretty crazy that this cop did this. And then the news reporter is like, by the way, if these moves look familiar, it's because it's from none other, like the cop, Clint Bowler, is none other than that Clint Bowler from 15 years ago, you may remember, was a superstar athlete. And so this kind of plants the seed in like Kieran's mind that this guy could be worth at least inviting to a tryout at the bare minimum. And then when they he starts doing some digging and some research on him, he realized that Clint has a dark past and was actually involved with some nefarious shit to begin with. So he's like, when he pitches it to his other teammates, which they're all kind of like unsure as to whether or not, should we let a cop in? Like, come on, that's freaking crazy, Kieran.
Right.
He's like, no, I thought the same thing, but take a look at his past, and then not only that, but like there is a piece of leverage that we would have.
Totally. Like, who likes squeaky clean protagonists first and foremost? We don't.
I was say they're okay. They serve their purpose, but
not for us. As we said, we're New York. There are no squeaky clean protagonists.
Y'all did get introduced to Spawn first, so
exactly. Yeah.
It makes sense. Yeah,
sure, man. Absolutely. He made a deal with the devil. Think about it. Like that was. Well, there's a lot of that in here too, which is like. He's now, if he makes it onto the Barracudas, that's going to give him another chance at his superstardom athletic career. But B, it's also going to probably bring him closer to his son, which it does, right? Like so, Malcolm now seeing his dad, who he's previously saw as a deadbeat, whatever, is now the newest player on his favorite team.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, Malcolm's dream to when he grows up is to become an engineer for Ramgod, and now he almost gets like an internship, like working for the team. Yeah. So like it's bringing Clint and his son closer together, but at the risk of, if he gets implicated at some point, we know that the Barracudas are going to like bring Clint into the robbery fold. Right. And at what point does that also bring in Malcolm into it? So it's like, it's going to come down to him making a really hard decision and choice over whether to like stay bad or like do what's right. And maybe, like give up everything just to protect his son.
Totally. And the father-son component is a huge element of this series, and one that like Morgan and I being brothers and being very close with our dad, we always said, and we've said this in a couple of interviews before, is like the time in which you are a young teenager and you're a parent and you're trying to connect with your kid. We find that to be a very interesting like time in, parent children kind of lives, and like finding that area that they relate to each other, because there's so many misunderstandings, I think, that go on.
Especially depending on how big the generational gap is.
Totally. On both sides. And we said they were already kind of starting at a disadvantage here. And the fact that, this is...
He only gets to see his son once a month, by the way. So like he lives with, or Malcolm lives with his mom, and she's got like full cut, and his stepdad, and the mom has pretty much poisoned him against his dad. Like it's like, your dad's a deadbeat, he's not a good guy,
which
like,
is
whatever.
also a pretty common thing.
That happens.
Right? Yep.
so Clint's always in this sort of like can't win situation. But in fairness to Malcolm and to Desiree, which is Clint's ex, like he's not like a good dad. Like he shows up late to pick him up and stuff like that, or get off work. Like you'll see in the first issue, like when Clint's supposed to like gets his son for the weekend, it's during like the official like Super Bowl for like the belt title for Ramgod, where his favorite team is competing, and he's like forced to watch it on a stoop because like through his like his visor glasses, because like his dad was late to let him in, and he couldn't be spending it like watching it with his friends because it's the one weekend a month that he gets to.
Right.
So it's like it creates that. I mean, there's so many things with Malcolm too that like he's homosexual, but like Clint doesn't know that at all. And so he's like, oh, any girls like that you're into and stuff, and he's like, yeah, dad. And like,
so that's got to be an awkward conversation.
And it's not that Clint is like homophobic or anything. It's just he doesn't know anything about his kid. Like, and so
that's a pretty big aspect of somebody's existence to know about. I mean,
there's just like a chronic misunderstanding and inability, I think, to relate, and like that's why him joining Ramgod and kind of checking his own personal box of like, I can now reconnect with my youth and my like, I didn't get to fulfill my dreams and my potential when I was younger, and now I'm thrust back into the limelight and can do this. And then also I can reconnect with my son because this is his favorite thing. And like, yeah, check. Then it's like, oh wait, but then it comes with this, and do the pros outweigh the cons, or the cons outweigh the pros? Here I'm stuck in this weird mix, and like, what will he kind of go with? Kind of thing, or you listen to lower the angel on your shoulder.
That's just the A storyline. Like there's other, like we said, this is a big world, right? So
I was gonna say there's a lot going on in this book.
Then you have like there's very interesting characters that make up the Barracuda's team, right? You have Kieran, who's almost like a Tyler Durden type, right? Like Fight Club, like very preachy and kind of the man, but like very the guy in the blue, to the second from the left to Malcolm, who's like he's the man with the plan and like always seems to command everyone's respect and attention. Elsa is like second in command, like the right hand. She's what we find out later on that she's actually while she pretends like she's got no care in the world, she and that she needs this money and all this other stuff, you find out that she's actually the daughter of like one of the other team owners and stuff like that. So like it's like why she could have played for her dad's team, but she didn't. Maybe her dad wouldn't let her on that team or something like that. So she's like doing her own thing. There's Vex, who's the one bot character that's made by Trucks, who's the team engineer, right? And Trucks is also gay, and he's like open about it, and like because he's an engineer, like Malcolm wants to be just like Trucks, and so Trucks takes him under his wing. And then you have Remmer, who's like the wild card in the group. He's like, I don't know if you ever seen, I don't know if you ever seen the movie The Town, but he's kind of like Jeremy Renner, which is also kind of why we call him Remmer, because he's heavily inspired by like that character in it, who's like just a true like bad dude, like violence and like courses through his veins,
but like fiercely loyal too.
And also, so like,
isn't that the movie where the scene with Ben Affleck comes in and he's like, I need you to do something with me. We're going to go hurt some people, and I can't tell you what it is, and you can't ask me about it ever.
Yep.
That's
and he just looks at him and he's like, all right, well, whose car are we taking?
Right. So, and he's like a very important character in the story too, because he's like, the friction between, like, he definitely doesn't want Clint in the group. He's the one that's like the most adverse to the whole concept of him, is constantly giving him a hard time through it, and like not trusting him with certain things, which is cool. So like the whole dynamic between the team is really interesting, because some have like sort of higher moral standards than other players do. Like Elsa will not murder anyone. She refuses to. She's not going to take a life on it. Remmer could give two shits about that kind of stuff. Also, because like tech and mods, like getting modded, like just like adding, better like contact lenses for enhanced vision, or for like augmented reality display and things like that. Like it's legal to a percentage. So like think of it like steroids. Like if you're modded too far, you're like banned from the league because you're like on steroids almost. Right.
Okay,
but because then you're like too far.
You get an unfair competitive advantage. So it's like the same thing.
You can have one bot, and you can't like even technically like you're almost like cyborg like when you get modded, but like if you get too much. So like Remmer's always pushing that line just to like be as close to the tipping point as possible, which is cool.
Oh, that's awesome. So what inspired you guys to tell this story specifically? because like I said, there is a lot going on. You've got a lot of like cyberpunk sci-fi elements going on, and then you've got like this really like deep father-son story where they're trying to find a new connect. Like, what inspired all that?
Yeah, so I'll take this, Morgan, and then I'll kick it back to you. So I created this with Morgan during COVID, when like right in the beginning, when everyone was kind of masking up all the time, and we were just like thinking about like what's going to happen in the world. Morgan was also playing Cyberpunk 2077. Shout out to Cyberpunk 2077. At the time, and like I had just watched, I think, Blade Runner 2049, which I don't think nearly.
So you guys had this kind of stuff fresh in your head.
Enough love, and like for us, Cyberpunk as a genre feels to us so underutilized and untapped, and it's such an interesting genre that we were like, we want to make something set in this kind of setting and this world. And as we said before, being, you know, two sons who are very close with our dad, there was like a father-son thing that we kind of wanted to play with. Morgan and I both are big football fans. Morgan's a massive NFL fan. So like, and for us, like, we like sports and we wanted to mix. We didn't think enough things now really like mix in sports, but don't like, if they do, they're like overly dependent on it. And they don't have like other substantive storylines that like at the end of the day, it's like, it's character driven, right? I think the most impactful stories are ones that have deep and interesting characters. And Morgan is phenomenal at that. And we were like, okay, like how do we kind of layer this where there is a sports component, but there are interesting characters that inhabit a cool ass, unique world in a genre that's underutilized. We kind of were like pulling all these different things and throwing it together in the stew and kind of cooking something up. And we were just like, hey. And it was at a weird time, you know, obviously I remember that at that time, people were like washing their Amazon packages, you know?
My household was doing that. I mean, it was scary at first because nobody knew anything.
Exactly. And like, that's where this was kind of born out of, where we were like, you know what? Like, and then I remember like just thinking about like and I looked at like my air purifier in my room and I was like, well, what if like buildings like adopted that kind of technology with like, as we pollute our atmosphere and like, there are all these kind of, you know, pandemics going around and they're different types and no one knows, bird flu, whatever. I was like, what if it was like, we had these skyscrapers that were basically large air purifiers that were like cleaning the air and they were like they were based off of, it's always like classism, right? It's all based on like money and everything else. We're like the nicest neighborhoods were the ones that had the cleanest air. And like kind of sprinkle that throughout this series where you'll notice like Siphon and other things and corporations, like they have like percentage based on like how clean the air is in that community, in that area.
Right. They got like mask warnings going on.
Yeah. So actually backtracking a second, Owen, I remember like one of the first things that you kind of came to me with the idea was like, you know, what if like masks turned into like, instead of just face covering, like full face helmets, right? Where like certain areas that there's a toxicity level or the danger of breathing in the air or whatever would get so high that like people were required to pretty much like helmet up, right? Like don't expose your skin kind of thing. And so like you'll notice literally on page 1, I think, of the entire comic, like it as we mentioned, like there's like a sponsor or like some PA announcements talking about like the safety zone, you're entering an unsafe zone, masks are required at this point, you know, enjoy your day and, you know, remember you're in safe hands with Safeway. Or whatever it was, or Siphon, we said, but like it parallels, you know, kind of like, well, extremism and like, well, what if this situation were to get really bad? And then so like you really feel in different areas of New City, like there, like the level of elitism, like is this place like, oh, super clean, you don't need a mask at all here, and you know all the rich people have like clear masks and they can, whereas like you go into
they have like the better tech basically,
right?
And the poor people have the worst tech. So
you got the big, huge helmet that's all
exactly
blacked out.
They're like purposed or like, you know, they don't work as well and things like that. So
kind of like you ever seen Elysium? You know?
Yeah, Elysium. Yeah.
So it has a lot of that where it's just like instead of being on like a moon or in like a floating space station, it's like, oh, they're within the city. So there's that classism thing that's going on.
I think my co-host's camera has frozen, but at least we can still hear him.
Yeah, I don't know what just happened.
Got it.
This is like a cool picture of you as opposed to like one where you're like,
right. I mean, they could have caught you while you were scratching your nose or something.
That would have been crazy. It is what it is.
It happens.
Wouldn't be the Indie Inkwell without issues.
I guess.
100%.
He's got the better tech. I guess.
Yeah.
On that note, you know, he's got the better tech.
So we're really excited about the story, though, and the series as a whole. Like the artists that we got to work on this, and there's a few, or you'll see, phenomenal. We're introducing like a new colorist, Ren Spiller, that we found, and I would say he's like a true diamond in the rough. It's not like he'd worked on a lot of other huge titles and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's from our brother from another.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
He's incredible. I mean, his colors are extremely vibrant. Now, you'll notice, too, at the top of and the bottoms of all those pages, you want to throw them back on there again. So initially, when we did the book, we did it for like magazine sizing. So like the pages were a little like squattier and wider.
Okay.
They were bigger. And then when we moved it into being like a standalone comic series, it needed to be reformatted. But like we didn't want to just chop off the sides of the artwork that would like crop the artwork too much. So we wind up having these like sort of black spots on the top and bottom that were like, oh, that's like a waste of space. So our genius letterer, Ismail Nahad, we call him Nahi, from the Maldives, like came up with the concept with us. I mean, but he's the one that designed it to like sort of add in this like story component to each page, so that at the very top, like it tells you like it's informational pieces that add to the world building and the story. So like in the middle page, you had like the RGSN thing, which is like the Ramgod Sports Network, ESPN equivalent.
It was almost like a heads-up display.
Yeah, pretty much. It's meant to almost be like
it's like our Jarvis kind of thing, you know?
So it tells you like if you enter like if we go to a new scene where like masks are needed, it'll like be like mask warning, safety rating low. Like there's little added like world building elements that really pull you into it. There's sometimes there's like advertisements that will pop, like fake ads though, not real ones,
right?
For products that only exist in the world of Ramgod.
Because why should product placement just be limited to real things? You know,
right? 100%. Fallout does it.
Yep, exactly. Fallout's fantastic at it. So. We've been doing this stuff for like 12 years too. So it's not like we just started doing it. In every comic we've ever put out, we've been doing that. You'll notice there's actual like fake ads that in like sort of ad beats in between like scenes and things like that. But they're not for real ads.
I've seen comics do that with like flyers on walls and scenes, or like a news broadcast or something, but it's not often done the way you guys are doing it.
Well, you'll also see that there's certain pages that are not like in the background or overlaying an actual comic page. It's just like an ad. But it's for an ad for like a new medical equipment that'll repair you if you get injured, or something like a medical bed you could buy or something like that, which is kind of cool.
Exactly. I also want to get
a subscription for Ramgod Plus, right? Like, which isn't a real thing, but like you want to stream Ramgod all the time and get all the behind the scenes access. Well, sign up for Ramgod.
Right,
Plus.
It's like your ESPN extra stuff. You get all your interviews and all your
Al Michaels to the combo here. Yeah. You're summoning your inner Al Michaels, I said, Morgan.
Well, I initially went to school for broadcast journalism, like at Hofstra way back when. I wound up changing my major, but like definitely have that a little bit in me too.
Sure. If I'm going to give a shout out though, because I'm kind of like the shout out king with some of this stuff, is to Joe Illich, who's our story editor. He was at Heavy Metal at the time, and he's just such a fantastic person and like leader. And he was a real veteran in this space and really, I think, pushed us in the right way to think outside of the box. And as we said, like these kind of like anti-heroes and just like these like flaw and just making our characters more real and less conventional. And I just want to give him all the props in the world, because he really helped bring this this story and series to another level. And obviously to Massive, who's been the perfect partner for us. And I always say they're very like future facing. So like they started with Whatnot as their parent company, as a tech company. So they very much so, I think, are well equipped to adapt as kind of the landscape changes, just like obviously the strikes in Hollywood and everything has changed the entertainment industry. I think that like obviously change is inevitable and you kind of always have to be ready to adapt. And I think that Massive has the right personnel and the right perspective for that type of stuff. So
they definitely make especially their digital stuff, they make it very easy to find.
Yeah, for sure. They get it. So Michael, Trevor, and Kevin, shout out to you guys.
Yeah, we actually had Kevin on the show not long ago. So
yeah, they're also like really solid creatives too, which was cool for us too, because like all of them had like we had pretty much brought them like a finished book, right? And then that was already edited by Joseph Illich. And now, like they come involved, get involved, and they know that the art's set, but like they're going to identify places that could be strengthened, or maybe there were certain plot points or scenes that weren't conveying the same story elements or message that we had in our brain. So they would tell us and work with us, and they helped level it up yet again. So it's been, and that can be tough, to be fair. Like for anyone who's ever tried to work creatively, it's like too many, what do they say? Like too many cooks in the kitchen.
Too many cooks in the kitchen, yeah.
I was a little concerned about that, just going to a new publisher, because this initially started through heavy metal, and then ultimately, because of what happened at heavy metal, it got like frozen and stuck there in purgatory. And then so Owen and I sort of like fought to get it back, worked out a deal with heavy metal, and then went to Massive, who was initially like getting involved right towards the end of heavy metal, sort of like last active period. And they said like, yeah, we want to be involved. And they were the ones that came up with the idea to move Ramgod out of the magazine and into its own sort of comic series. So after we got it back, we went to Massive. And
so basically we were already vibing with them in that capacity. And then with everything that happened with heavy metal, we were still like, hey, we still vibe. You guys wanted to do this. We want to do it. Let's make this happen once we get it back. And we did. And as Morgan was saying earlier, we're going to a new publisher too with something that's finished. You can be hesitant to change certain things, whatever. But Morgan and I very much so have kind of like taken on the mentality of best idea wins, and we check our egos at the door no matter what.
That's rare.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for us, we're just like, listen, if anyone's going to shit on an idea, and everyone's got an opinion in this world, and people love to leave a negative review before they will ever leave anything positive, because we're just we're inclined to do that now. We just hate. And we're like,
that's why we have stuff on the show that we enjoy. We don't talk about stuff we don't like.
Yeah, exactly. Like I always say, like, if you leave like a restaurant, right, and you have like a good experience, your first inclination isn't to leave them a good review. Restaurant, and you have a bad experience, all you want to do is leave a bad review.
Getting on Google right now.
Yep. Yeah. So my point is, like, we check our egos at the door. Best idea wins, and we're like to pride ourselves on being very collaborative. And we're like, hey, if anyone's gonna shit on an idea, I'm like, go ahead. Like, we welcome it, but you gotta give constructive criticism and a suggestion on how to do it better.
Yeah, don't just come at me with negative opinions. Give me some ideas on how to make it better. Like,
or be specific in your critique. What isn't working for you? What was your issue with this scene or something like that? And so one of the really refreshing things that we saw, from Massive and from Trevor, who's like sort of our new editor over there, he pointed out a couple things that like just weren't landing for him that we thought were evident with how he wrote it, but they clearly weren't, because without us, once we told him like, well, it's supposed to be, he's like, oh, that changes my perspective. You have to, I suggest you rewriting it a little bit so that comes across more clearly. And we're like, okay, without, and it's walking that fine line of not being too on the nose, but like, putting in the right subtext and things like that. But just they have a really strong team over there creatively. And like, we'll push back in places that if we're like, well, we really like this for this reason, but we like everything that it's been such a collaborative effort in our ability to say,
it sounds much more like a team rather than everybody just barking orders.
I don't like it. It's not, it hasn't been that at all. We've talked through issues if we're not on the same page until we get on the same page. And that's awesome.
That's good.
To find
that's how it should be. That's how it always should be.
Yep. And as I was saying this before, Morgan, I got lost, but I said another shout out to Chris Yates.
I mentioned him on.
Oh yeah, 100%. Chris is the one who set this up.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
Chris said something to us like right off the bat. So he's fairly new at Massive, but he said he's like, the way that he's like, Morgan, Owen, the way that I'm treating this is if I wrote it and it was my baby, and how would I want it to be represented and pitched and pushed out there. And I'm going after it. Like, I was like, I love you, dude. Like, yes, that's exactly what we wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Well, that's how that person should operate in that role, though. Like,
but
that's a good PR person.
Not
that's
everybody who operates like that.
No, trust me. I've dealt with some people that are just like, why are they letting you represent them? But
yeah.
I know Michael has too.
I know exactly. I know. Yeah.
But no, that's really refreshing to hear. Tell us a little bit about Darkrose.
Cool. I'll let Morgan take this for sure.
So Rosenblum, right? That's kind of where it came from. The Darkrose is like, we like generally telling a little bit more gritty, dark toned style storytelling. Not kid like young kid facing. That's not we actually do have a young adult series, but even that one still like leans more towards
like 13, 14.
Yeah, not like super young. So That is the equivalent of like our Skybound or our Marvel. It's our umbrella company. It's our creative studio. So it's the equivalent of like Morgan, Owen, Johnny, Nat, like the main creatives like behind the IPs and the IPs, intellectual properties, right? That's like the Hollywood term,
right? Sort of like Black Market Narrative and all those guys.
Exactly. Like, God is an
predominantly, a dark fantasy, sci-fi. Dominant.
Like we're starting to do horror now a little bit too. But like the goal was for us was to like, people would always ask like, Morgan, like you're starting to make a name for yourself. I don't know how many people have said this to me, but the few that have, they're like, if you could write on any series, what would it be? And I'm like, you mean if I could write for any series and just do it? And they're like, yeah. And the honest answer is like my own. Like I would of course say yes to like coming on board to write X-Men or Spawn or something like that. But
right, but any project like that is going to come with a lot of restraints.
True.
Yeah, and a lot of history and world. But it's like there's certain directors that have like said outwardly that they don't really want to get involved with like someone else's world.
Yeah. As soon as you forget something or miss a detail, someone's gonna call it out.
Yeah.
I don't even know so much if it would be like me like missing a detail, because I'm very studious. Like I would do my due diligence and homework, read every single comic and iteration, fan facing, whatever, or like otherwise before I ever like put pen to paper and started like working on something. I want to make sure that I understand that story inside and out, not just focusing on the stuff that resonated with me or that like I grew up with. But regardless, I think it's like, even if I had my own direct, like sure, they've done it this way before, but I kind of wanted to do it this way. I want to put my own creative, spin on something or whatever. Yeah. So like, generally speaking, like that's why we have Darkrose, is because like our goal is to create, we're not like, oh, well, we want to do our take on like Frankenstein.
Yeah, original IP all the way.
Like, everything we do, it may be inspired by a bunch of different other similar or familiar.
Well, I mean, is there anything that's not inspired by something else these days, though? I mean, seriously.
Yeah, I'm always like, everything is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah. At the same time, though, like there's only so many stories the kinds of stories you can tell. You can tell the redemption story. You can tell the claiming of the sword story. Like, if you study writing and creative writing, they really boil it down. I think like 12 different kinds of stories that you can tell, and then ultimately you're just changing the setting and the characters in a lot of cases. But I heard this quote, and I always forget who said it, and I really have to look this up. But it was, if you get inspired by one place only and you take all your inspiration from like one thing, then that's plagiarizing. But if you do it from like a bunch of different things, then that's just drawing inspiration, and that's you like channeling things that impacted you and resonated with you and making it your own. And so I love that outlook, because I think there's so many things that I think you'll read and see and experience while checking out Ramgod, where you're like, oh, this kind of reminds me of that, and it probably is because we got that idea from that exact thing.
Right, because I mean, you guys as creators, you consume media too, so it's not like you're only like locked in a dark room somewhere with a bunch of candles lit, writing your,
like, no, for sure. And we're asking us about Darkrose before, and we were talking about like best idea wins, and we're talking about like fans and stuff like that. And I want to kick this to Morgan, because him and our other partner Johnny we're all working this other graphic novel where we created through Dark Horse, called Winds of Numasera, and we are making a tabletop board game. We made a tabletop board game from it, and
nice.
And being comic guys who were entering the board game space was kind of like trial by combat for us. And like, you guys think that the comic reading community is tough critics? Go to tabletop games.
I can only imagine.
They will rip you apart if they think there is any flaw in the game. And I mean, Morgan, you can take over for this if you want to. I know you got.
But yeah, I mean, like when we talk about building like our original stories, our goal is always to like see them flourish and grow, like sort of in a 360 scope and not just in one lane. Like, we love comics. It's probably our favorite medium, mainly because it's what first kind of got us into that headspace, the creative headspace. And it's
the one we start in always. That's like the incubator is starting in comics, basically.
Right.
But then, like moving into like board games was like, after we put out Winds of Numasera, the graphic novel, in addition to wanting to continue the graphic novel, we started having some people like hitting us up through DMs and like through our website, being like, hey, have you guys looked into making this a board game? And like, we started hearing that more. And Johnny had been chirping in my ear, our other partner from Darkrose, saying like, dude, I want to do a game. And I was finally like, all right, let's let's look into trying to make a game. Now I'm not nearly as experienced in making games as I am with comics. So as Owen was saying, like, it's a tough industry there. We put our first like alpha prototype out and it looked sexy. Like the game looked cool. The cards looked really pretty and stuff like that. But like the playability, the mechanics of it is like, it's a math equation. And to try to find something that feels like their strategy.
And we're like, oh, creating a comic is hard. And then it's like, oh, we tried creating a board game. And it's like, whoa, that is just another. Anyway.
So we put the first version out. We went into like conventions similar to like Comic Cons, but we did like a gaming tour, a convention tour, more specific to that space, to let people test it and then give us their feedback, and like would take their feedback, because we were, like I said, no egos. We don't want to put out a bad game, and we know what we don't know, and so we listened to the experts, and then we actually started like hiring consulting like pro game designers and publishers and things like that to get their feedback on it. And like
when we bring it to the conventions, like the fans and the players, you do unpub stuff, they're going to give you their critiques, and then they're going to say, this is how I would do it. This is how you can improve upon it. And you were like, oh,
And then it's pretty cool in real time. Like, cool. Now implement your rule in real time. Like, pretend that's the rule of the game and start trying and
like, let me see what you're talking about. Like,
yeah, and like, I want to watch you guys play it as if that was the rule. So I know the card says it's supposed to do this, but now this guy had a cool idea. Like, play the rest of the game. We'd watch them play it. Sometimes we'd sit down and play with them while they're doing it too. Yeah. That was cool, because that's like a truly in real time. So we jotted down their notes. We made the changes, and we just,
it's like an interactive focus group.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, totally. For 5 years, we repeated that process. Like 20 conventions, whatever it was, working with all these different pro game developers and like, just hardcore hobbyist players. And ultimately we got to a point where we brought the same game, or the newest iteration, back to the same original people that like shat on it. And they were like, dude, whoa, when is it coming out? I need to get this. And like for us, that was like, I can't, like I'm like, so you guys think you would buy this right now? Is it like, hell yeah. When is it?
And that takes a lot with that community. Like, I don't know that scene very well, but I know they are super harsh with everything.
We reached out to a couple like gaming, like tastemakers and influencers and stuff. And when we, we asked for an honest review, and we're like, hey, look, we're not expecting you to like love it or any of that. We would just say like, be gentle, because like, if you don't like it, try to find at least one thing that you like about it. Like, assuming that they're going to be really critical and hate it. And like, I got this recent email back from one of the editors from Gaming Trend, and he goes, he was the editor, like the lead editor that assigned it to like a different editor to cover. And he's like, Morgan, I don't usually chime in on this stuff, but I just want you to know, like, I just finished playing this with Dan, and holy crap, dude, this brought me back to like what old school gaming felt like. Like, well done, bravo, guys. Like, I was not expecting to like it this much. They gave us a 95 out of 100, and they are
wow.
We were like 95, and they're like, yeah. And now people are coming out being like, this might be my new favorite game of the year. Like, not Kickstarter game, not like fantasy game, like game period. And like, so for us, it's been extremely rewarding, and we're finally launching in Kickstarter like in towards the end of June. We haven't announced the official date yet, but like,
and
you'll have to come back on to talk about that. That's so cool.
Yeah, we would love to. And as Morgan said, being comic guys who are entering the gaming space was very intimidating at first, because like, we understand design, packaging, all that stuff. As I said, my background's in advertising. Like, we know how to make shit look good. I'm confident. I'm the most confident in that, and great artwork and everything else. But as I said, the game mechanics and the playability was the thing that we were more novices in when we started. But then, as I said, like, we are fans ourselves in the same way where we would be like, hey, comic fans, if you don't like something that we've written or whatever, how would you do it better? What would you change? How would you evolve it? Like, I always ask anybody who's fans of ours or readers or whatever, or just contemporaries, like, what would you do differently? How would you evolve this? As I said, best idea wins. Check your ego at the door. Just be constructive. We had that same approach with the game, and we were not like, okay with putting out really a subpar game that people might play once and be like, you know what?
It looks good. Yeah, initially everyone was just telling us
it doesn't play enough where I would really want to do it again, or they felt, cheated via the Kickstarter, whatever it is. So we were like, no, we are going to continue to hammer and chisel away until this playability matches the quality of the design, and then we'll put it out. And we feel like we're at that place now.
And now segueing back to Ramgod, the goal now is like, if Ramgod does well, like, we want to make Ramgod into a game. I mean, it's like perfect setup for a game because of the sport aspect that we've already been thinking about how to do it and stuff. We've got like this incredible artwork, which you guys will see. But like even those characters you were just showing up, like those aren't taken from the comic. Those we actually had Kanan White and Ren Spiller, the line artist and the colorist, like make so that at some point maybe we could turn them into like a card game or like into, you know, posters or like collectibles or whatever it may be. Even like
I was already thinking action figures, man.
Yeah, I know. So Massive has some plans for that already. Like if the comic does well, you'll be seeing those babies and like
for sure.
Like,
oh, that'd be so cool.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge action figure head, but like whatever it's something of especially somebody I've met and interviewed, like I want to get it. Like,
you know me, man. I'm a big action figure guy.
Yeah, I know. Mike's got the whole thing behind it.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. Well, hey, man, we're excited about that stuff. As we said, like our big approach kind of is like, you know, making, you know, stories that fans and readers can interact with in different mediums. So like that was something we felt very passionately about with Winds of Numasera, because we had the graphic novel and we were like, yo, we want to expand upon the characters, the lore, the world, all of this stuff. And what's a great way to do that? Make a board game.
And it expands the fan base too, right? I mean, there's comic book fans who love tabletop games, and there's tabletop fans who I'm sure who read comic books.
Yeah, there's a Venn diagram for sure. And our thing was like, hey, we're going to do that. We have that same plan and outlook with Ramgod as well. So why not?
Well, speaking of Ramgod, before we guys let you go, where can people find it?
At your local comic book shops, everywhere books are sold. I believe they're on sale for pre-order right now. You can go to your local comic shop and pre-order it just by telling them, hey, I want to get Ramgod. That's Ramgod, just like it sounds phonetically. There's also like I think 8 or something like that different variant covers to choose from, and they're all epic. And some of them are limited edition, some of them are like chrome foiled and stuff like that. You can also go on to massivepublishing.com. And you'll see they show all the series there, and you can just click Ramgod and then pick the cover you want there. So the final order cutoff date I think is like June 24th. So you got about a little less than a month to go in and pre-order it before those limited edition covers all go.
And that's where that QR code on the screen will take you guys. It will take you straight to massivepublishing.com and to the page where Ramgod is available for pre-order.
Sweet. Yeah, click it.
Yes, please do. And also be sure to check out a bunch of other stuff from Massive while you guys are there. They've got all kinds of good stories over at Massive Publishing. We love the guys over there. So yeah, definitely check out everything they've got over there. And then where can people follow you guys online?
So you can follow me at spoon_city, Spoon City. Although on X or Twitter, whatever we want to call it, it's got an extra Y because some other asshole took the singular Y.
Don't you hate it when that happens?
So I'm Spoon City on TikTok, Spoon_city, sorry, on TikTok, on Instagram, and then, you know, Twitter or whatever X is with an extra Y.
Yeah, I'm Oflo212. There you go.
And you're pretty much only on Instagram, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was looking for you other places. I could not find you on other.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest on social media. Honestly, I'm a little bit older, so I don't know.
No,
I'm an old soul. What can I say?
I would say me and Michael are kind of stuck on social media, and sometimes, unfortunately, other times it's fun.
I just honestly, as I said with the ADHD, I can just rabbit hole so easy and go down these tunnels. And then
I get into doom scrolling all the time.
Oh yeah, the doom scroll is real, man.
Yeah, man.
Especially with TikTok, with that powerful algorithm. Oh my God,
dude.
You're suddenly like, oh, I where is the day gone? And I don't know. So
yeah, all of a sudden it's been 2 hours and I'm, still sitting in my garage because I never stopped looking at my phone.
Yeah, I do that except when I'm on the toilet.
Yeah.
My girlfriend's like, what are you doing in there? I'm like, I'm sorry, I have space, I was doom scrolling. She's like, right.
Yeah.
But again, everybody, if you want to check out Ramgod, the first issue, you can get it pre-order on Massive Publishing's website right there at the QR code on your screen. For our audio listeners who are listening to this the day after we air it live, there is also links in the description of the video, of the audio episode on Spotify, basically anywhere you will be able to find it. And if you want to help us help support the indie comic book community and support the show, you can head over to our merch store, pick up a t-shirt, a hoodie. We do have some summer items coming very soon. I'm going to get on there. We're going to get some shorts, some tank tops, some stuff that's actually, you know, breathable and not all black for the summer month.
Hey, we're New Yorkers. We're all black everything. All the time. Dude, that's like the colors of New York, man. It's the uniform. So we're good.
I love it.
We're good.
I'm literally getting it right now.
Oh, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
But yeah, everybody, please make sure you guys check out Ramgod, check out Massive Publishing. We will see you guys back here same time next week, same channel. And as always, everybody, please be safe, be kind, take it easy, and have a good night.
Appreciate it.